Happy morning, teachers. I once again welcome you all to the session. Now we have Miss Dhyan Aparna from Erode IB campus who will be presenting on strategies for and of learning. She will highlight the effective assessment approaches that support and enhance learning progress. I would now like to hand over the session to Miss Aparna. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you so much, my team, ma'am. Happy day, everyone. Happy day, everyone. I'm Dhyan Aparna from EYP, Erode IB campus. Before we begin, I would like to thank each and every one of you for taking your time to join this session on assessment for and of learning in early years. Today's session is designed to be very simple, practical, and more meaningful, where everything that we discuss today can be implemented in your learning spaces too. In today's session, we will explore how assessment is something that we do with the children and it's not to the children. Okay, now let's take a moment to look at what are all the takebacks for you by the end of this session. By the end of the session, you will get a clear understanding of what's the difference between assessment for and off learning. And we will look into some practical prey-based strategies to implement that in your classrooms. And we will explore some real case studies of assessment in action. And at last, where you will be able to create evidence-based assessment plans with confidence. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. I can see a wide range of responses here. And this is completely okay because assessment has meant different things to different people based on their own experiences. I think many of us have experienced that assessment is something that happens after learning and often through paper-based tasks. But here in IB and especially in early years, assessment is something different. So, the two questions that we will be exploring today are why is it important to assess our children and when do we assess our child? First, let me tell you why is it important. We assess our learners to understand how they are learning and to figure out what kind of support do they really need to reach the learning outcome. And in earlier assessment is support is only about supporting their growth and it's not about measuring how they perform. And the next big question here is when do we assess a child? Do we assess them only at the end of the inquiry? No. Assessment can happen in each and every part of their learning journey. For example, if we can assess them during playtime or even when they are having a conversation or when they are exploring something new or even during inquiry, assessment can happen in any domain and during any part of their learning journey. And that brings us to our first big idea for the day, assessment of learning. Before I explain what assessment for learning is, let me ask you something. When learners are learning something, how do we know that what is happening in their minds? Have you ever put this question into your mind? When they're learning something, how do we know that what is happening in their minds? We don't fully understand their learning by observing, by focusing only on the learning outcome. We can understand their learning by observing the process, by listening to what they say, by seeing how they play, explore, and question. When a child is doing something, asking questions, or even getting confused, their thinking is visible to us, right? And when we pay attention to these moments while learning is happening, that is what we call as assessment for learning. You can just think of it like a GPS. When we are driving a car, the GPS is not checking whether we have reached the right destination or not. It's just guiding us in real time. And that is assessment for learning, which is nothing but a formative assessment. Now, if you look at all these images together, in each image, the learners are engaged in different activities, right? You can notice that I have taken pictures from different domains. Why? Because assessment can happen in any domain. Now, I want you to keenly look at each image and tell me, as teachers, what are we really doing in those moments? You can just take any one picture and tell the one thing that we do in that particular activity time. You can just drop your answers in the chat box too. You can just take any one image and tell me the one thing that we do in that time. I can see responses like share and learn, self-learning. Depicts the concentration, ask learners what they do, and that leads to a conversation. Observe the children while playing in the construction corner, what they talk with their peers. Yeah, this is completely fine. Here, we are not just supervising them, we are reading the learning that is happening. For example, if we take the first image where the learners are playing in the construction blocks, here the learning is not in the tower. The learning is how they build, how they solve the problem when it falls, or how they collaborate and communicate with their peers. And with the help of all these information, it helps us to decide whether do we need to support them, or do we need to extend, or do we need to give them more time. And the same kind of thinking applies across all other images, even though the activities are different. Now, if we take a look at the second image where the child is working on with the numbers, again here the learning is not whether the child is doing right or wrong. The learning is how the child is thinking, how the child is connecting the numbers to the quantities, how confident is the child while working on with the numbers. So across different images and different domains and different activities, but here the process is the same. First we have to observe them, uh, then we have to ask questions to deepen their thinking. We have to listen what they are saying, and at last we have to respond thoughtfully. And this is assessment for learning. It happens naturally during the learning process. So once assessment is done well, the learning flow follows naturally. So till now we saw how assessment happens during learning. Now let's take a look at what happens after learning. And this is where we go into assessment of learning. Here, assessment of learning shows what children have understood at the end of the learning. Here, learners are given an opportunity to express their understanding independently. Now, if you take a look at all these images, you have to take it as a whole learning process and not as an isolated task. For example, if you look at the fourth picture, you can see the child can write sentences. To reach this final stage where the learner is able to write simple sentences, a lot of learning has already taken place. First, the learner has practiced to write the basic strokes, then slowly moved on to letter formation and slowly practiced writing the words. And only after experiencing all these things, the child is now able to write sentences. This final piece of writing is the summative moment. It shows us what the learner can do independently after learning something. It's nothing but the culmination of the learning at that point in time. And we can also capture it through different ways. We can capture it through short video forms or through photographs or the child's work sample. So I hope you got a clear understanding of what is assessment for and of learning and how it happens naturally in our earlier classroom. Now let's jump into the heart of the session where I will be sharing you a strategy. Okay. Here, I want you to remember one thing. Nothing here is an extra work. This is what we already do, but now we are doing it intentionally. Here, I have taken the topic how the world works, and in that, our inquiry focus is the life cycle of a butterfly. Let me tell how we actually did this in our classroom. We didn't start with a lesson plan or any explanation. We just showed a picture of a butterfly, and that's all we did. Then we asked a very simple question: what do you see in this picture? And you know what? When we asked this question, we got different responses it's a butterfly. Few children said the colors, few children said the patterns, and few children said it flies. With their responses, we can clearly get an understanding of what the child already know and what are all the vocabularies they had in their mind and what are all the ideas do they connect with the butterfly and how much exposure they had earlier. And then from collecting all their responses, then we slowly moved on to the next part, which is nothing the puzzle. Here, we asked a simple question: what do you wonder? Where do you think the butterfly comes from? This is where their curiosity came alive. We got responses like from its mother, from egg, from nature. So these responses helped us to think what they were wondering about, what they were trying to make sense of, and what they really wanted to know. So, from their wanderings, we slowly planned the explore part. We narrated the very hungry caterpillar story. I hope we all are familiar with that story. So, with the help of the story, children naturally began to understand where the butterfly comes from, how it grows, and how it changes. So, the entire journey from showing a picture and collecting their responses and then provoking their curiosity and at last helping them to find out the way from where the butterfly really comes from. This is assessment for learning. It happens naturally during the learning process and it was completely driven by the child's responses. So once this understanding started forming, we wanted to see how the learners could bring all the learning together, and this is where we slowly moved into the assessment of learning part. So when children listen to the hungry caterpillar story, they explored all the life cycle stages of the butterfly, and we planned a hands-on activity where learners created the life cycle of a butterfly, and we have captured it through a short video. I'll play it for you. So if we look at the journey as a whole, assessment for learning helped us understand the learner's thinking as it was developing, and assessment of learning helped us see what learning has settled and taken shape in them. So both are equally important and connected. When we assess in this way, assessment becomes more meaningful and the learning journey becomes more joyful. So, okay, now let's take a look at what are all the different assessment methods across different domains. As I said earlier, assessment can happen in any time and in any domain. Here are some common areas that we can see every day in our earliest classroom. Okay, if we take the free play time, assessment can happen mainly through observation. As teachers, we watch how children play, talk, and interact with their peers. We can capture this through the anecdotal notes. While writing anecdotes, it's very important that we record the exact words used by the learners. Why? Because those words help us to know how the children are thinking. And if we take the inquiry process, we can use strategies like a think, puzzle, explore, which we explored earlier. This is one of the visual thinking routine strategies. There are many other VTS strategies we can use, such as see, think, wonder, think, pair, share, circle of viewpoints. These strategies help us make learners' thinking visible during the learning. And if we move to math, we can use some simple strategies like traffic lights. This help us to give the instant feedback from the learners so that we can decide what that we can do next. And for physical development, which is very crucial in early education, we can use developmental milestone checklist. These help us understand where the learner is now and how we can support them to attend the required milestone. And one thing here to remember is the age. Even a gap of 4 to 5 months can make a big difference. So it's very important to assess with their age and their individual readiness. And for language, we can use strategies like see, think, wonder, and think, pair, share. These strategies work beautifully when children look at a picture, talk about what they see, and share their ideas. Through this, we can understand how they try to build vocabulary, how they try to share their thoughts, and how they make meaning. So, across all these domains, we bring everything together through portfolios. Portfolios are a good way to capture their learning journey over time, and it shows growth in a meaningful way. And all of and of all these things that we do every day in our classroom, but here the key question is, are we doing them intentionally and meaningfully as a part of assessment? Now let's take a look at this slide, that is the visibility tools. What you see here are different ways that we can collect evidence of our learners learning. There is no single correct tool because different tools work for different purposes and different moments. For example, concept map shows how children connect their ideas, and the learning journal capture the learner's thoughts and their own experiences. And self-assessment tools help us to think about their own learning journey, and we can use the tools like checklist and rubrics to observe some specific skills, and we can use anecdotal records to help us capture the real learning that is happening, and photos and video shows learning as that is happening. And some tools like KWL charts and word wall support thinking and language development. All of these come together in student portfolios, which tell us the story of growth over time. Assessment is about choosing the right tool to make the learning visible. Now, all right. So we have spoken about what assessment for learning is and what assessment of learning is, and how both of them are naturally happen in our classroom every day. So now it's your turn. On the screen, you can see the practice activity. I would like to choose any one domain that feels familiar to you. First, think about what is assessment for learning and ask yourself, What would I observe during the activity? And what's the one question I might ask to understand the learner's thinking? And then think of assessment of learning and ask yourself, what evidence can I collect and how will I document the progress? You can just scan the Mentimeter QR code, and or else you can take the link in the chat box. Okay, thank you so much for sharing your responses. As I read through them, one thing that is very clear is you're already doing assessment in your classrooms. Okay, thank you for your openness and your participation and your reflections today. Thank you for joining the session. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Aparna, for the clear and informative session on strategies for and of learning. Your input on assessments were truly enriching and providing us with the practical takeaways that we apply in our classrooms. I hope the participants gain some valuable ideas from the session.